We're taking a look at the Valken V12 in this episode of the Gear Guide. So 2014 was definitely the year of HPA, or high pressured air powered airsoft guns. Now, if you're not familiar with how an HPA gun works, it's actually pretty simple and very similar to a paintball gun. So with Valken's history on the paintball side, it's no wonder that they made the leap in 2014 into the HPA world. So the way the V12 system works, it's actually a drop-in engine, so it replaces your entire mech box. Everything comes out, the engine goes in, or you can get them, if you're not so DIY inclined, pre-installed like the model I have right here in my hands. So the engine that replaces the mech box is made of two materials, polymer and alloy, and then the internals are actually machined out, so it looks very similar to your standard AEG mech box, except you've got a little wire coming out the back and a hose coming out the bottom for the power that pushes the BB down the barrel. So under the hood of the V12 engine, you have an electronic control system that handles the firing of the BB, and FPS is adjusted by pressure at the regulator, so it's not handled inside the gun, it's handled outside, or you can do it by swapping the nozzles on the front end of the V12 engine, which are color-coded depending on the amount of FPS they're capable of producing. So when you look at the system as a whole, between the air nozzles and the regulator, you have pretty much an infinitely adjustable gun that requires very minimal tech experience and gives you the ability to get any kind of rate of fire or FPS that you're looking for. Now, since the V12 engine is electronic, it's actually powered by a battery and it's wired here to the rear, but you don't really use a normal battery. I mean, you can, but it's designed for either 7.2 LiPos or 9.6 nickel metal hydrides. And the one I have, Valken actually sent me their Valken Energy battery, which is only a 250 mAh battery, which is super tiny. And that thing's actually powered this gun since the day I received it, almost a month before this review. So it has plenty of juice to keep it going, and it connects in the back with a little micro JST connector. So for those of you looking to make the leap to this, you will need to pick up a small adapter so you can charge that battery when it does run empty. So looking at the externals of the gun before we get to the inside, this actually shipped pre-installed in a G&G 30th anniversary GC-16 MOD0 body, which is a full metal receiver, a polymer handguard with an integrated top rail, and 3 included modular rail pieces that you can put on wherever you want. In fact, I have one over here for my camera, I've got one down here where I put a vertical grip on it, and I have an extra one I haven't even installed. The rear stock has a familiar modern style look with a rubber butt pad, polymer build, and a locking mechanism so it won't slip out of position once you have it set. It also has a bonus, which it has a little tiny battery compartment right here that opens up where you can put a CR123 battery to power your accessories and your gadgets. So the muzzle brake on the gun is orange polymer, as according to US law, and the front sight is metal above the gas block. Now it looks like it's fixed, but you can actually take it off, remove it, if you want a little bit more rail space, like for a PEC box or your camera or something up there, or if you want to replace it with a flip-up sight. The rear sight is also made of metal, and it is fully adjustable for windage and flips out of the way. And if you want it gone, you want to go with that sleek look on the upper metal receiver, you can pop that metal sight right off and go clean. The package also includes a 450 round G&G metal high cap, which feeds great, fits in here fantastic, and gives you a ton of rounds. I mean, 450 is extremely generous for a high cap mag. And of course you get modern fire selector markings on the lower metal receiver, a custom grip, which is really comfortable to hold, and a 1-point metal sling adapter right here in the back. So if you run those little bungee slings, you've got a place to hook it up without having to buy any extra accessories. So internally, since we're not looking at a regular AEG, we're not going to be talking about motors, pistons, and all that stuff. In place of it is that HPA system I mentioned earlier, and of course it is electronically controlled by an internal circuit board. By doing this, you get all those great features that you normally would only get in a high-end custom MOSFETted gun, but it comes factory standard in the V12. And since the electronics are internal to the V12, programming is actually done through a series of colored lights here through this tiny little hole on the receiver where there's normally a body pin and trigger pulls to set it straight. In fact, you'll even notice the trigger does move fully all the way back when it's in the safe mode, but that doesn't matter because when it isn't safe, the whole system is powered down. But to power it up, it's really simple. You either flip it right on, you get a flash of the light and you're up and running, or to enter programming mode, you take it back to safe, you hold the trigger down, and flip it to safe while depressing the trigger. Once the light flashes green, you are now in programming mode and you can set all those great features I'm going to tell you about. So from programming mode, you have control of the entire system, and they give you a little cheat sheet that comes in the box to tell you what color, solid or flashing light corresponds to the mode you're in, so you can adjust all those settings independently or just skip past the ones you want to leave stock. So for you techie guys out there, it gives you opportunity to fine tune this for the weight BB you're running, the configuration, the barrel, the hop-up bucking, all those unique factors. You can set and tweak them until you get the perfect configuration. And for the rest of us, there's some really neat programming features, which again, I love in this gun. You can actually set the fire control to be safe and semi only, safe and full, or safe and 3-round burst, which is my personal favorite setup, just to have those nice controlled little 3-round bursts going down range so you can get the rounds on target but not overshoot your opponent. And you can adjust the rate of fire as well in 5 round per second increments. Now the stock configuration that ships with this worked perfectly for me. I only actually changed it over to burst fire. It's the only setting I made the adjustment on. You get 20 rounds per second out of the box, and it worked perfectly with 0.2, 0.25, and 0.28 Valken BBs during my tests. But if you want to step up to a heavier BB and you're playing that sniper role and your field allows it, this actually has a sniper mode in it, which is really kind of cool. It's opposite of the way a normal AEG or HPA gun works. Rather than actually loading the BB at each trigger pull and then firing it, it preloads the BB. So it actually lets the air nozzle go back, the BB goes up into the hop-up chamber, and it seats it, kind of like chambering around in a sniper rifle. So when you pull the trigger, only the air system opens and fires the BB, so there's no delay. I mean, you're cutting that every bit of delay out, so you get that instant trigger response. Once the round fires, it reloads another round and waits for you to pull the trigger again. So it mimics what you would get out of a bolt-action sniper rifle. Another great feature that the V12 has, which you can tell definitely comes from the experience that Valken has in the paintball world translating over to airsoft, is they have a lockout feature in here on the electronics. So what that does is it prevents any temptation of cheating or anyone who may think they want to make an adjustment on the field to try to ramp up that rate of fire above field limits and then make a quick change back before the ref catches them. Those days are gone. And if you couple that with a regulator lock on your tank, then you have a system that is really secure, that a field owner can feel comfortable fielding without anyone getting that little hint of maybe I want to turn up my power or turn up that rate of fire to get the advantage. Taking this thing to the chrono, it's going to be a little different because normally I run chrono tests and you're going to say, okay, this gun shoots this FPS and this rounds per second. But since this thing is really adjustable, I'm going to show you the ranges of what the black nozzle, which is what shipped with the engine, the factory stock nozzle, can do on different PSIs with the regulator. So on the low end of operations, around 80 PSI, it's kind of the standard of where people are going to be shooting. I was seeing around 330 FPS with 0.20 gram Valken BBs. Cranking the regulator up to 120 PSI, which is pretty much the top end of what you want to operate this safely before you potentially can do any damage. I was seeing around 390 feet per second with 0.2 gram Valken BBs. Now also keep in mind, you can make the changes. If you want a higher FPS and your field allows it, you can move up to a different nozzle. So again, like I've said, it's totally tunable, and that's what makes HPA systems so unique. Rate of fire with the factory programming was right at that 20 rounds per second. It's around 19.6, 19.7 on the rate of fire test on our X-Cortec Chrono, which is well within the margin of error and definitely pegging the numbers they promised. But like I said, if you want to have it a little slower, you want to dial it down to maybe 15 so your field wants to limit that, or if your field lets you have it and you play a lot of CQB, crank this thing up to 25 or even more, you can do it through the programming. So my final thoughts on this gun, I've really been hesitant moving to an HPA platform, and I still love my AEGs, don't get me wrong, but there's something really neat about this. You get so many great features. It's super easy to use and very easy to program and make changes, so it's not that difficult to approach for the new HPA users. My only real concern on this was the length of the trigger pull. It's a real long pull before you hit the little sensor inside that tells the gun to fire. It's a lot longer than an AEG, for example, and since AEGs have some way of connecting, you don't really feel the break in the trigger. I'd like to see that take up, and the good news is Valken has a how-to video on showing you how to shorten that trigger response, the right material. It's really easy. It's a piece of plastic and some super glue, and you can get in there and do it. So if you're DIY inclined, that's an easy fix. But I think Valken did a fantastic job with the way they handled their power system. When it's been safe, this system is powered all the way down. I mean, it's functionally off. It's not pulling any juice from the battery whatsoever. So there's no fear of draining your battery, and these little guys aren't expensive, but they can be hard to find, and draining that battery will kill a lipo every single time. So bottom line, the Valken V12 engine was a blast to use, fun to shoot, and the perfect platform to get the player who's really on the fence about moving to the HPA world, an easy and affordable way to get into it. The engines are right around $350 US, and complete guns start as low as $450, or as tested here, this one's only $520 before your tank and reg. You still have to pick those up. So if you're looking for a self-contained HPA system, something that's really easy to use and very approachable, take a look at the Valken V12 engine or complete guns, and you can pick these up anywhere Valken products are sold. So everybody gotta ask, are you HPA fans? Are you gas blowback fans? Are you AEG purists? Let me know down there in the comments. I know the HPA world does get a bad rap, and that stinks because, you know, it's always that one or two players that kind of ruin it for everybody else. But do you think Valken did the right thing by putting all those safeguards in here and all the extra features to allow field owners to lock the gun out to prevent that one or two rotten apples from spoiling it from the rest of us that really want to run an HPA gun and do it responsibly? Let me know down there in the comment section below as well. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of The Gear Guide. I'll be back in the next episode where I do caveman airsoft and use a barrel and a BB as a blowgun to take out my targets from range.